you
Just one
know,
row?
yeah, like off to the side.
Both sides.
Yep. Hi, I'm Ray Meisner.
Nice to meet you. Finally meet you in person. I appreciate the Committee 100 always committing to making sure that we can have these types of things. So I appreciate all the work that I know went into it. I just want to make sure.
Thank you so
we
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think we are.
Good to see you in person.
Good to see you
know,
too.
it's like
Yeah.
I've seen each other like 8 times.
I know.
It's good to actually see you in person.
What a production.
I think she's gonna take a little picture.
Yeah, that's my mom.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, family, right? That's what it's all about.
I'm so glad that we could get this space this big. I didn't realize there'd be this much interest.
I was like, we'll never fill up 150 chairs.
Well, you know what I mean? As I say, is when I talked to the manager like 2 weeks ago, I was like, I don't want it to look empty if not enough people like fill the seats.
Right.
But then I was like,
Well, they've been bringing them in like when we saw the lineup, and I pulled into the parking lot at 5:30 and was like, I knew I was late, but I was like, oh man, hi mom.
Well, great. I mean, it's I look forward to
Yeah.
I'm glad I can be this much part. You guys have been
You're huge. It's a great suggestion, and you got jumped right on it and got it reserved for us. So
They're doing the corn pasta on that order.
okay, all right,
Is,
thank you.
Yeah, she is. I just want to make sure I have
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Thank you, Phyllis.
really honored to have everybody here. My name's Ray Meisner. I'm the president of the Committee of 100, and we welcome you to the Virginia's 10th Congressional District Candidate Forum. We're partnering here with the League of Women Voters. This is Janet Gorn. For making this happen. The program committee with Chair Rebecca Perkins and Vice Chair Phyllis Griffith. We also want to thank Councilman Donald Shoemaker for making this happen and getting us this space and this suggestion. We thank C-SPAN and ABC, 7 News, and all the media that have come out here today to get this out there to the constituents. So with that, I don't want to forget to mention that we thank all the contributions of our families and loved ones that have supported us in our effort to further serve the community here by putting on this event. So now I just want to go over some general rules. There will be no electioneering, and what that means is no signs or shirts, refrain from cheering, clapping, or doing anything distracting for the candidate. Should there be a disturbance, there will only be one warning before you're asked to leave. And you don't want me to come sit next to you, and I assure you I can always find a seat. So, with that, I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance and welcome the American Heritage Girls, Troop, Virginia Troop 1914. Please come forward and present the colors and lead the pledge.
Color guard, attention. Audience, please rise. Please remove your hats. Those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Color guard, forward march. Color guard, halt. Color guard, advance the colors. Prepare to post the colors. Post the colors. Color guard, salute. Please recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? 2. Color guard, reform. Color guard, forward march. Color guard, halt. Color guard, dismissed. Audience at ease. This concludes our opening ceremony.
Thank you, American Heritage Girls, Virginia Troop 1914. And without further ado, please get out all your applause right now by welcoming moderator Dr. Stevens Barnsworth and the candidates Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton and Captain Humcow.
Thank you so much. I'm Professor Stephen Farnsworth from the University of Mary Washington, and I am going to be asking the questions that have been provided by the panel sponsors for the event tonight. The questions will be asked in the fashion that was determined by a coin toss prior to the debate. There will be opening statements to start. Before we do that, just a quick reminder that the candidates have agreed to the rules that we have about limiting comments, or applause, or laughter during this presentation. We take away from the time that candidates will have to explain what they will do if elected if we do not accept the rules that were put forward and accepted by the candidates. Before we start with opening statements, and candidate Cow will be first, followed by candidate Wexton, I want to take a moment to just say how important it is to have a community service like this and to thank the League of Women Voters and the Prince William Committee of 100 for putting together such an important community event. Thanks so much to all of you. I also think it's important, once again, to try to recognize these people who are willing to make an extreme sacrifice for public service. I think that anyone who has ever run for office will tell you it is not the easiest thing that they've ever done, and anybody who's elected will also tell you that that's not the easiest thing they've ever done. And so all of these people who are willing to serve and who have served this country in the past can be recognized now. So applause to the two candidates. And with that, we will turn to opening statements. And it Cows first. The statements are going to be made, and the questions are going to be answered from the seat. One last thing I want to draw your attention to. We have in the front timekeepers, and they're going to show you signs for the length of time. The opening statements are 2 minutes, and when there's 30 seconds left, you'll see a green card. When there's 15 seconds left, a yellow card, and then when you're supposed to stop, and you should stop, you'll see the red stop sign. And so that's the process here. So 2 minutes for opening statements, please.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to Committee of 100 and the League of Extraordinary Women Voters. I say that only because I have 4 older sisters, and so, you know, if anybody wonders what it's like to grow up with 4 older sisters, when that's like having 5 moms. But they taught me a lot of things, and I'm very blessed, and also they're just great moms and grandmothers. And now my beautiful wife and I have five beautiful children. But I wanted to, I think most people know my background. I came to this country as a refugee. I served this country as a special operator for 25 years. And I fought in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somalia. But I think tonight the referendum is going to be about the 10th district. Congresswoman DeBusk is going to tell you and defending her record, her voting record, and saying that, you know, all her voting record has not affected the highest inflation rate in 40 years and the highest now interest rate in 16 years. She's going to say that by defunding police and putting social workers in place of police officers, it made our district safer. She's going to say that our borders are secure while law enforcement officers are struggling with high crime rates, with low retention rates within the ranks, as well as high deaths from fentanyl. We're going to be looking at the economy right now. All economists agree that the Inflation Reduction Act did nothing to reduce the inflation in this country. But why didn't she listen? Well, it's because she cares more about her political agenda than she does about the 10th district. I think the people in the 10th district want change, and that change comes on November 8th. Thank you.
Sometimes it's a little difficult to remember the rules. And so we'll make a suspension here so that you can also applaud after candidate Wexton's opening remark. But after that, during the individual questions and answers, again, the candidates have agreed to these rules to maximize their opportunity to be heard in this community. So there will be one more set of applause moments permitted, and then into the questions. Candidate Wexton, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton, and I very proudly represent the 10th States House of Representatives. This is not something that I ever was part of my life's plan. I went to law school because I wanted to help people, and I was very pleased to be able to do that in my career as a prosecutor, as an attorney and advocate for abused and neglected kids, and even as a judge in local courts. But in 2012, I saw what was happening in Richmond, and I saw Republicans use their majorities to do things I absolutely did not agree with. And I saw them use their majorities to repeal one of the few vestiges of gun violence prevention law that we had here in Virginia. When I saw them use their majority to make it harder for people to vote. When I saw them use their majority to attempt to require women, before they underwent the constitutionally protected right to an abortion, undergo a state mandated vaginal wanding, I knew I had to step up and run. So I ran for state senate and I won, and I went down to Richmond. It turns out I'm a really, really good legislator. I passed 40 bills, every single one of them with bipartisan support. And it was a great life, I enjoyed it greatly, but since 2016 when Donald Trump was elected, I knew I had to do more. I knew it was time for me to step up again. When I saw his attacks on the rule of law, when I saw his attacks on immigrants, his attacks on women, the attacks on facts, I knew I had to step up and run. So I ran and I won, and I went down to Washington, and I worked across the aisle there to provide good results for my district. You know, we are facing unprecedented troubles right now. This is a time when the country is more divided than we've ever been. We need people who are willing to work across the aisle and get things done, and I've managed to do that. I'm proud that we passed a once-in-a-generation bipartisan infrastructure bill. I'm proud that we have passed legislation to lower costs for American families. I'm proud that we have passed legislation to do so many wonderful things that are so unprecedented. Not just with women's health care and reproductive health on the line, with democracy under attack. We need to do better, and I will fight every single day to represent every single person in my district. Thank you so much.
Now, have you gotten it out of your system? It's okay to disagree, but it's important in these community events not to be disagreeable. So we have a rule, the candidates have agreed to them, and now we'll move to the individual questions offered up by the Prince William Committee 100 and the League of Women Voters. The first question, first response goes to candidate Wexton, and each of these responses are 1 minute per person. There is the opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal for the first candidate asking a question if something is said that they want to follow up on, but that will be only a signal to you if you wanted to. The first question, again, of 1 minute for each candidate, is about inflation. Inflation is on the rise, impacting Americans' wallets. What do you believe caused the increase in inflation, and what can Congress do to address it? Candidate Wexton first.
So inflation is not due to any one cause. There are a number of reasons that we're suffering from historic inflation right now. The main one being the pandemic economy, right? There was a big shift in terms of our supply and demand. People no longer were going on vacations and things like that. They wanted to buy more goods. At the same time, they're home and they wanted to buy more things, right? And pick up their houses. At the same time, we saw supply chains suffering from historic shortages, and things were shut down around much of the world, making it harder to actually get these products. You have that disconnect between supply and demand, you end up with higher prices. Another part of it is definitely Putin's war in Ukraine, cutting down on global oil and gas. So we worked very hard in the congressional delegation to lower food and fuel costs, and put for legislation to do that. Also the Inflation Reduction Act, which is going to make a big difference in people's lives by cutting the costs of healthcare premiums, and finally allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices and bringing down the drug prices, and also helping to decrease costs for energy now and going forward. Thank you.
Inflation began on day one of the Biden administration when he put on all the regulations through executive orders on the oil, chemical, and gas industry. And instead of relying on American workers who have the cleanest practices in the world, we're now going to Saudi Arabia, we're going to Venezuela, and even Iran, who are murdering women right now in the streets for protesting against the morality police. We can be energy independent. That's what caused inflation, is all the being able to rely on our own oil and gas instead of other countries.
The next question goes first to Canada County. Fuel prices reached historic highs this year, impacting Americans' vacation, travel, and commutes, creating supply chain challenges as well. What can be done to address this situation and prevent future spikes in fuel costs?
We have to list all the executive orders that crippled the oil and gas industry. That happened on day one. He signed all those things. He killed the Keystone Pipeline XL. He killed a lot of infrastructure and also imposed a lot of regulations onto the refineries and the oil industry.
The main thing we can do is cut our reliance on oil and gas. There's also things that we can do to help fight against profiteering. There's no reason why ExxonMobil and all these gas companies and oil companies are making historic profits while we all suffer at the pump. So these are things that we can and should do. There are things that we're working on fixing in Congress and things that we'll continue to do. So the Inflation Reduction Act will save money on everybody's energy bills. Making us less reliant on oil and gas is so important. Keep doing it. Another thing worth noting is that the oil and gas companies have thousands of unused leases that they're just not drilling. So they're holding back their production in order to increase their profits, and that's just wrong.
Okay, we can't get to clean energy overnight. This takes a long time to get there, and to punish the American people is wrong. And the Inflation Reduction Act does nothing, absolutely nothing to reduce the inflation. Every economist, even Bernie Sanders, said it doesn't do so.
This is question number 3. It goes first to Canada. Mortgage rates have increased and people have suffered significant losses in their retirement plans over the past year. Well, what can Congress do about this situation?
Congress is working hard to bring inflation under control, and that's what we're doing with the Inflation Reduction Act and other pieces of legislation. Other things we need to do is ensure that we make the U.S. more globally competitive now and in the future. We did that through the CHIPS and Science Act, which will help create good-paying jobs here in the U.S. and also help create the workforce for those good-paying jobs in the future. We need to use an all-hands-on-deck approach, and that's what we're doing in Congress right now. Keep fighting to do.
The problem we keep seeing is that the federal government tries to get in there and price fix everything. And when you look at fixed firm pricing, that's what brings up prices of gas and oil and even mortgages, because when you're trying to mess with actual rates, that's what's going to cripple the economy. The economy needs to work itself out and let Americans be Americans.
She has a written liar on her hand. All of these.
Third, I'm sorry.
Hey,
Unless you're running for office and your name is on the ballot, and I know that it's not, I'll ask you not to make comments during this conversation. A 30-second rebuttal.
Thank you very much. So, one of the things that we can do is to decrease our reliance on foreign oil and gas, as I said. One of the things we're also doing is trying to fight back against profiteering, which is another thing that we're doing, and this is very important.
We'll move to the next question, which goes first to candidate Cow. The Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe versus Wade, returns the issue of abortion to elected officials in the states. Now, there are dueling bills in Congress on this topic. What federal action on the abortion issue would you support?
First of all, I think what you're trying to ask is where I stand. I'm a pro-life. That's where I always look at every single thing I do. My candidate, my opponent on the other hand, wants abortion up to the moment of birth, and I think most Americans do not agree with that. And so, look, the Dobbs case put this matter where it belongs, which is to the states. As a federal, as a federal legislator, this is not within our purview. We need to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare.
I believe that we should trust women to make these decisions for themselves. And this is something where my opponent is outside the mainstream terms of his view. So this is something also where it's a matter of freedom and control. Women deserve the freedom to make their own decisions about their reproductive control. There's no decision more personal than that. And it's a lie when my opponent says that I favor abortion until birth. That's absurd. It doesn't exist. And that's called infanticide. That's not something anybody can support. So, the law in Virginia is very limited in terms of third trimester abortion. The fact is that my opponent wants to allow states to completely outlaw abortion in all states and to outlaw things like contraception as well. So I voted in Congress to codify Roe, voted in Congress to codify women's rights to birth control and to contraception. I'll continue fighting for their rights and their right to make the most intimate decision in any woman's life, whether and when to start a family.
This law has nothing to do with contraception. That's fear-mongering that we're trying to scare the public during an election year. And honestly, there is a law that allows for abortion up to the moment of birth. I mean, even Governor Northam allowed for the baby, as he said, to die peacefully on the table while the parents are making decisions. So it is law.
We're going to move to another question on abortion. The question now is, what sort of support for families who are in crisis pregnancies or have children that they cannot handle? What sort of support should the government provide to families in crisis? This goes first to Candace.
Thank you for your question. This is a very, very important one, especially when the U.S. leads the industrialized world with infant mortality and maternal mortality. So don't tell me you're pro-life and not care about the baby once it comes out of the mother's uterus. This is something where congressional Republicans have threatened to shut down the government rather than continue pandemic care programs that fed hungry kids in schools, and where they absolutely refuse to do things like extend the child tax credit to the most needy families that cut child poverty in half. So don't tell me that you're pro-life and you don't care about the baby that's actually
I care a great deal about babies after they come out of the mother's womb because we adopted a child. Our second child is adopted and we love her to death. And I wish that we would streamline the process for adoption. It took a long time and a lot of money to do that. And, if we look at those programs instead of federally funding abortion, maybe we'd be a better country.
The next question goes first to Candace. Would you support changes to the law that limits the ability of Congress and the Vice President to discard the Electoral College slates submitted by the states in presidential elections?
The founding fathers made a very good decision when they wrote the Constitution. I mean, there's a reason why we have the Electoral College, and that's why we need to stick to it. The way they looked at basically man and our temptation to overturn things that we don't like, that's why they made the laws the way they did with the Electoral College.
Most people don't realize how close we came on January 6th to losing our democracy. We cannot let it happen again. There are already movements afoot in the states to allow, but appointed partisans to substitute for judges of the local state. We can't let that happen. That's why I have voted for the Electoral Count Act, which would prohibit that from happening, make it clear that the Vice President's work is just a ministerial function, and also increase the threshold for members of Congress or the Senate to object to the certification of various states electors. These are things that we need to do. This is bare minimum we need to do to protect our democracy. Because believe me, there are movements afoot in the state to prevent this, to have a better result for President Trump or whichever the right-wing candidates that runs for president in 2024. Can't let that happen. The right to free and fair election.
Moving on to the next question. Both candidates have issued statements opposing the controversial Prince William Digital Gateway proposal. What would you recommend to the supervisors as a way to mitigate the potential environmental risks and the threats to the Manassas National Battlefield? This goes first to candidate Wexler.
I believe that there's a place for everything, and that data centers have no place near the battlefield. It's not just about the data centers, it's also about the high voltage power lines that feed them. But I understand living in data center alley, as I do in Loudoun County, that they have certain benefits. You know, they don't put kids in the schools, they generate a lot of income for the locality. But I would say that just to work with them in terms of placing these data centers where they should be in industrial regions, not in agricultural part of the county, which we want to preserve that agricultural character for as long as we can. Thank you.
I have a lot of personal feelings on the battlefield. I mean, I believe that Manassas is a historic park. However, I don't like government overreach. The part where I would step in is because the watershed in Occoquan feeds 2 million people in both Loudoun County, Prince William County, and also Fairfax County as well. And that watershed feeds Fort Belvoir, which houses Defense Logistics Agency, Defense Threat Reduction Agency, as well as Defense Acquisitions University, and a special branch of JSOC. And that's where we're encroaching on the water that affects that base. And, you know, we've seen in Camp Lejeune the effects of the water on some families, and now very recently in Hawaii. So I don't think the DOD is going to stand by to allow the watershed to affect the level, and that's where I would step in as a federal legislator.
Next question was to Candidate Howe. What is your position on extending the Washington subway system, Metro, into Prince William County?
Well, sir, I mean, I used to use the Metro all the time when I worked at the Pentagon, and it's a great way to you know, get commuters out there for with very little impact on the environment. However, the problem is that we extended the railway out all the way to Ashburn, and it's been sitting there for about 3 years empty. So, you know, as a federal legislator, I would be very concerned about, you know, stepping in and allowing this to happen and not have the oversight we need. So we need more work with the Prince William County as well as the surrounding counties to make sure that this thing doesn't become a debacle like the Ashburn Center.
We absolutely need to have better transit options for our constituents and our residents here. And I believe that that's a decision that would need to be made by the locality about whether they want to join the Waumata Compact. I know that, for example, VRE has been a great success story here in Prince William County. Many people commute using VRE. That only helps us during office hours, during business hours. We need to make sure that we have other options for people. I think that it's something that would have to be dealt with at the local level. It's something that I certainly want to explore because I feel that people in this county deserve the right to be able to commute, to take Metro into the city or wherever they may go. It's something that we will certainly be exploring, and it's my understanding from Waumata GM that the Silver Line will be open in a matter of days or weeks, not months and years. So I expect that will be happening. But I've served on the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission when I was in the state legislature. And that was, we handle all the transit issues, and I know that one of the things we're going to need is to pick up the tab for another river crossing. That's one of the things that limits the ability to run more trains. So these are all things we're going to have to deal with, and I'll continue to work with our local partners on.
Yes, sir. Another issue is the with this would really help with the mass transit because, you know, we're moving the HOV from HOV 2 to HOV 3, which, you know, I mean, we're reading now that Washington, D.C. has the highest number of teleworkers. So it's going to be hard enough to find an extra rider on your, you know, the Slim line, but now you're adding at HOV 3. So I think the Metro stops in Prince William County will really help that.
The next question goes first to Kenneth Wexton. What is your reaction to President Biden's college student loan forgiveness plan? Who do you think should bear the burden to fund this program? And what are your own ideas about any future loan forgiveness for students?
I'm glad that President Biden is taking student loan debt seriously. I'm glad that he is taking steps to eliminate debt for those who need it most, but I do differ with him in some ways. I don't think that the plan was targeted enough. I don't think that it does enough going forward. I think that that's why I'm a proud co-sponsor, and I want to support the College Affordability Act, which would increase the use of Pell Grants for things like career and technical certificates, not just for 4-year degrees, which would encourage and incentivize states to invest in their own state universities and colleges, and to make community college more affordable, and also increase the use of dual enrollment programs and things of that nature, so that kids can start college with credits already in the bank. So these are things I think we need to do going forward. I also want to make sure that we follow through on the things we've already promised, things like the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which hasn't worked as operated, and needs to make sure that we get the people the rights that they were promised, and the forgiveness that they were promised. Thank you.
The loan forgiveness plan does nothing to decrease the cost of colleges. All it does is just snap the chalk line and wipe away what's already there. We need to address the root cause of why education costs so much. And honestly, coming from a family of refugees, my parents tucked away every single dime. My mom cut every quarter. There's no such thing as mold on bread. You eat around it. Don't use so much butter. Those are the corners we cut. She put a little water into the shampoo. I mean, that's how we cut corners. That's how she was able to put all 5 of her kids through college. And a lot of American families here are doing the same things. And I think it's unfair that when we're saving for our kids, other kids get a free ride, and we have to pay for it. Because that cost gets down to somebody. At some point, somebody has to pay for that, and that's us.
It's not a free ride. People have been paying their student loans for years and end up with a higher principal than they started with. That shouldn't be happening. We need to do better going forward, and that's why I support the College Affordability Act.
This question was first Ken. How should Congress address illegal immigration?
So, as an immigrant to this country myself, I'm telling you right now that we need higher walls and wide gates. And because we need to be able to, yes, this is the way of opportunity. I grabbed onto every single piece of opportunity that I could get. The problem is that the immigration system is overwhelmed because we get more than 2 million people that came across illegally, while we're punishing the people that waited in line for years for the F-1 visas, for asylum as refugees like myself. That's the problem. When we inundate the system with illegal immigrants, and it inundates our system. I'm telling you right now that with 87,000 new IRS agents, maybe we can put some of those guys at work on the border, and as well as in the immigration system.
There's no question that America's immigration system is broken. It's become unduly partisan and unduly politicized, and it shouldn't be. It's something that America was based on immigration. So there's a lot of things that we can do that will help the situation. Things like ensuring that people like Dreamers and TPS holders have a path to permanence in this country. Ensuring that people who come here on tech visas have a path to a green card and to citizenship. So that's why I support things like the Dream and Promise Act and the Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants Act. There's other things we need to do too. We need to make sure that we have strong border security. I do not favor high walls and things like that. I don't think we should be using a first century solution for a 21st century problem. We need to leverage the use of technology along the border and at border crossings. And we have local businesses who are doing just that. Things like using facial recognition and identification at the border crossings. Things like X-raying vehicles and trucks to make sure there's no smuggling going on. And these are things that we need to make sure that we do, as well as fully funding USCIS and Customs and Border Protection, which I will continue to do in my position on the Appropriations Committee.
Okay, we had very high walls on our bases in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they worked. But look, it's very hard to expect the American dream if you don't embrace the American laws. It starts with embracing our laws first.
Next question goes first to Ken Wexton. What proposals would you offer to address the school shootings and the increasing violence in communities in this country?
Violence prevention is something that affects everyone. Everybody should be able to go to the community center or their school or their house of worship or out to a street festival and not worry about it being done down. But unfortunately here in the U.S., that's something that is an everyday occurrence. So one of the things I favor is things like true universal background checks. Make sure that guns should get into the hands of people who shouldn't have them. I do favor an assault weapons ban because these are the weapons of choice in these mass shootings. There's no reason that we should have weapons of war on our streets. There's so much more that we can do, and things that I'll fight for also include things like ensuring that domestic abusers can't get their hands on guns. I'm proud of my success in my legislative history on gun violence prevention. I'm proud that we did pass a historic bill out of the House of Representatives and through the Senate and signed by President Biden that will help save lives. There's so much more that we must do, and it's something that makes me want to continue.
Okay, there are laws for universal background check. Every time I buy a gun, I have a universal background check. And, and they have to wait for the FBI to come back to say it's good. My opponent keeps using language for fear-mongering in terms of like, hey, you can go out and buy a bazooka, which is not true. It's absolutely not true. I think that what you're trying to ask is how we care about school safety. And like I said before, with 87,000 new IRS agents, you can take that and you can put it in a school resources officer in every school in the United States for that amount of money and still have 30,000 extra officers to, I don't know, help out with the border. There's a lot of things we can do, but, the Democrats have had the House, the Senate, and the presidency in 2 years, and they have done nothing.
The gun show loophole allows anybody to go into a gun show and buy a gun. We need to close that. We need to do other things as well. And our kids shouldn't have to go to school in war zones. Our kids shouldn't have to go to school in scary places where they have to go through these lockdown drills. It's absolutely traumatic for them. We need to do better in this country. We don't have a larger quantity of people who are mentally ill or who are dangerous per se. What we have is an easy access to guns, and we need to cut down on that.
Next question goes first to Ken Cow. What is the role, if any, that the federal government should play in the questions of trans identity for children in this country?
I think what we were trying to ask is how Governor Youngkin's new order came out, and all it does is puts it down to the parents. The parents decide, always, always, always. I mean, like I said last Sunday, a school can't even make a decision on giving a kid an aspirin, but yet you're okay with them making changes to a kid's sex or or their gender. That doesn't go. I mean, that's always the parents' rights, and it's not the federal government's rights, it's the parents' rights.
Of course, parents are and should be involved in their kids' lives. But when it comes to kids in schools, trans kids in schools, let's remember we're talking about trans kids in schools. They are kids first and foremost. And the governor's executive order, which vilifies them, which will further make things hard for them, I think is misplaced. I think it's using these kids as political pawns. These are kids who are so victimized already. They already suffer much higher rates of suicidal ideation, of depression and anxiety. So things like this are not helping. I'm going to talk to providers in the area who say that they're getting frantic calls from kids. That shouldn't be happening. We're talking about a tiny little proportion of kids. It's cruel to use them as political pawns. And I believe in leading from a place of compassion and kindness.
Biological boys do not belong in my girls' bathrooms. There are locker rooms or there's courts.
The next question goes first to Ken Wexton. Is climate change real, and what is the government's role, if so, in doing anything about it?
Absolutely, climate change is real, and it is a real threat to America and to the world. We've all seen the increased wildfires, the terrible storms in places like Florida. We just saw the most damaging and deadly storm in Florida in almost a century. These are things that are going to keep getting worse and worse until we do something about it. There's no question that climate change is man-made and needs to be addressed. So I'm very, very proud that we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which makes the largest federal investment in fighting climate change ever. It will adapt us to use more renewables, which will help cut down on our carbon footprint. And these are things that we can't. We have ended up with where we are today. This is something that is extremely important. It's thinking about what kind of planet we're going to leave for our kids. Whether we're going to pay for it now or we're going to pay for it later by making FEMA pay the tab. These are things where we make investments and that makes us more competitive globally in the future.
Have you ever wondered why forest fires stop right at the California border? It's because they don't do anything to abate the forestry. I mean, you have to clean up and make sure that you know it's free from forest fires, that you have all the brush. Look, America has one of the cleanest, safest practices for petroleum, oil recovery, and resources recovery. We don't hold the people that are most culpable. China, places like China, Saudi Arabia, Iran. Except now we want to go to get oil from Iran and Saudi Arabia and Venezuela, where the practices are not as clean as the United States. We want to change the climate, and let's go ahead and hold those people accountable. But we won't do it.
We need to work with our global partners to reduce emissions globally. And that's something I was very proud that the Biden administration decided to re-enter Paris and make it a global issue. This is something where we cannot just put our heads in the sand, where we cannot hand things over to the oil and gas companies. We've already seen what has happened. There's no question that we need to take steps, and we need to do it now.
So this question was first again. Cal, should the federal government legalize marijuana for use by adults? Why or not?
This is a states' rights issue. The problem at the federal level is that for military personnel and the Federal Aviation Administration, when we're dealing with flight safety, we do not want them to be on drugs while they're working like planes and working around planes or flying planes. And that's why at the federal level it needs to be illegal. However, at the states, you can do whatever you want within your states. You can go to Colorado, wherever you want. But at the federal level, the reason why we need to keep it that way is for our military and our transportation administrations.
So one of the issues that we have at the federal level is that marijuana is still a Schedule. There's no reason for it to be in Schedule 1. It does have medicinal properties. It is not something that is dangerous in that way. So I think that first thing we need to do is deschedule marijuana federally. And as far as making it illegal in the states, I'm for that as well. I'm glad that Virginia is taking steps to legalize marijuana here in the Commonwealth. And I think another thing that we need to do is make sure that we allow banks to actually cover, to actually deposit the proceeds of marijuana businesses in the banks. It's something we're seeing is an increase in crime and having these all-cash businesses. I was on the Financial Services Committee, and we saw treasurers telling stories about them having to go and pay their taxes in suitcases full of cash. That shouldn't happen. It's something this is something we need to get with the times. We need to see about making it legal, and that's something I support.
In the 70s, we had so many accidents on board Navy aircraft carriers and on military bases because people were high on marijuana. So it's, whatever we want to believe that it doesn't affect your performance, it's false. Now, when we're talking about how we pay for it, whether it's FDIC insured, that's another issue. But it has nothing to do with the fact that in the federal government, we cannot have military people and Federal Aviation Administration personnel high on drugs. And that's why it needs to be stayed illegal at the federal level.
This question was first to candidate Wexton. What are your views on the Medicaid expansion and the Affordable Care Act so far? What are your plans for health care adjustments, if any, in the future?
So my proudest vote in the state legislature was to expand Medicaid here in Virginia. As a result, over 630,000 Virginians now have health insurance who didn't have it before. So the Affordable Care Act is something that's hugely important and has made a huge difference in the lives of people. So I think it's really important that we maintain it, that we not only that, but we build on that progress. So I believe that health care, access to quality, affordable health care is a right. We need to ensure that everybody gets access.
A single program run by the government never works. And let's just take Medicare for example. If you're buying a pill, when we talked earlier about firm fixed price, when the government negotiates price, it stays like that forever. So it doesn't have a chance to adjust with the market. So a pill that would cost now $15 would still remain at $130. And these are facts that I've just checked with pharmacists around the world. In fact, one of my friends, his wife has a condition where it's a $12,000 pill, and there's a $2,000 copay through Medicare. And if they had regular insurance, then the manufacturer can actually give a rebate for that copay. but it's illegal for them to negotiate that rebate or give some sort of back pay back to the customer if it's a government-run program. And this is why places like Venezuela have failed, because government-run programs do not work.
The free market has brought us things like people getting kicked off their insurance company for existing conditions. Brought us things like lifetime caps. Their kids off their health insurance when they turn 20 or 19 or 18. So these are things that the Affordable Care Act has prevented from happening. So and also I'm very proud that we voted to finally let Medicare negotiate drug prices. It was crazy that Medicare was required to pay whatever the drug companies asked. This is something where the VA had this right for many years, but for whatever reason, Congress refused to let, since they were probably in their pocket of big pharma, they refused to let Medicare negotiate those prices. That's something we as Democrats managed to pass this year to save seniors money on their health insurance. We need to make sure that we continue it.
The next question goes to Ken. Now, would you support or approve a federal law that would order the removal of Confederate monuments on public spaces?
On federal, look, our history is I'm sorry.
I should clarify, federal property.
Okay. Okay.
Federal property.
Our history's full of people that fought on both sides. I mean, there were great Americans on both before the Civil War and during the Civil War and after the Civil War. I just don't like us erasing history. And you're right. I mean, some people say, "Hey, we've never had monuments for losers before in any place." But these are Americans. These are Americans who like Robert E. Lee, who refused to turn his sword against Virginia. He hated slavery, and he did not believe in it. But he couldn't turn his sword against his own land, and so that's therein lies the problem. It's just we have this issue where they are Americans, and yes, they chose the wrong side, and then they chose the wrong thing, but they were also heroes from the Mexican War and wars before that as well.
Against the United States of America, that makes them insurrectionists, that makes them undeserving of having memorials to their lives in federal buildings or in federal spaces. This is crazy. And Robert E. Lee, not only that, Robert E. Lee was one of the statues representing Virginia in the rotunda, in the crypt, in a place of pride in the U.S. Capitol. So I partnered with my colleague Donald McEachin from Virginia to work with our state partners to get it removed. Now it will be replaced with Barbara Johns, who's a much better fit, who sends a much better message to America's youth. So I think that this is something where we need to be fighting to make it happen. I think it's something where it's incredibly insensitive to realize that there are lots of Americans who know that these Confederate statues are not there to celebrate the Confederacy. They're there to cause them to feel like they're second-class citizens.
Next question goes first to Ken Wexton. What, if anything, needs to be done to create a more secure Social Security system?
So as baby boomers age, it's going to be an issue for everybody. So one of the things we need to do is ensure that we have people paying into the Social Security that we have now. And so we need to make sure that we are cutting back on things, we are requiring folks who are in part of the gig economy to pay their fair share. One of the things that we've seen a lot of misclassification of workers as independent contractors, so that they don't have to pay, so that employers don't have to pay their share of the Social Security going forward. That we need to take steps to make sure that we keep the Social Security solvent. I do not favor raising the age for it. I think it's very important that we continue to keep it solvent.
This was hard-earned money that Americans put away to invest in our country, and we robbed them from it, and it's wrong. We need to figure a way to fix it. I balanced the Navy's $140 billion budget. I know where I could cut back on fat and pork, and we need to do that in our federal our economy also. I mean, we keep adding more. more and more. We buy more things, and you know, it's like a kid running around with a free credit card. We need to stay within our means, but we also owe it to the senior citizens who paid into this Social Security system.
I would just note that Social Security has gone a long way helping prevent seniors from living in poverty, right? Before it was implemented, many seniors were living in poverty. So it's very important that we maintain it, that we keep it. I absolutely oppose privatization of Social Security. I think that we cannot play risky with the futures of our seniors.
This question is first to Ken. Now, it has been decades since the federal government has balanced its budget. Should we be worried about that? And if so, what should we do about it?
Absolutely, yes, sir. We've got this now 16 years straight of continuing resolutions. This is hurting our industry. The largest employer in this 10th district is the contractors and federal government. And every time you pass a bill late, it causes a lot of ripple effects within the companies. Right now, a lot of companies, because we extended the continuing resolution until December 16th, a lot of companies have to let their engineers go. They have to lay off people because the federal government did not do their job. My opponent is a federal appropriator. This year, they appropriated the money at the mid-year execution mark. That means that they're already being targeted for not executing the money on time. I'm talking about the federal agencies. They're not executing the money on time, and so now they're being punished for it. They get money taken away because Congress is not doing their job. We need to balance the budget, and we need to do that.
It seems to me my opponent is conflating two issues. The issue of appropriations. It's congressional Republicans that have threatened to shut down the government and we refuse to engage in the appropriations process. So don't act like it's anything to do with what's happening now. The issue of having a balanced budget is something we keep trying to get closer to. And I'm very, very pleased that Joe Biden, through the Inflation Reduction Act, is going to be reducing the budget deficit. It's worth noting that Republican administrations ran up the deficit and debt more than Democratic ones did.
Look, Republicans and Democrats were responsible for not passing this bill, but I wasn't in Congress then. Okay, but the person sitting next to me has been in Congress for the last 2 years, where they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and yet they still haven't balanced the budget.
Question goes next first to Candidate Winston. What should the United States do with respect to the continuing Russian invasion and occupation of Ukraine?
So I believe very strongly that we need to push back against Putin. We need to support our Ukrainian allies. This is something that affects all of us. Russia's completely unprovoked, completely unprovoked attack and on a sovereign nation cannot go unanswered. This is something that's a real issue. I'm pleased we've had bipartisan cooperation on this, but there seems to be a lot of erosion on the left and on the right to now favor Putin. We cannot let him take over this country. The movement of the Iranian people has been absolutely inspiring. Of the Ukrainian people has been absolutely inspiring. But it's something where we need to keep our guard up and keep fighting and keep the money coming. Because it's something that Russia's not going to give up. I mean, the atrocities that they've been performing are absolutely horrible, so we need to fight back.
Right.
My heart goes out to the Ukrainian people. I know what it's like when another country comes in, or the communist government comes in and takes over. Right now, we just borrowed $55 billion from China to pay for the war in Ukraine. We're adding another $12 billion, and I looked at that bill. A lot of it goes to paying for the government over there, paying their salaries, paying for the military, paying for their infrastructure. It has nothing to do with the war. It has to do with sustaining the government over there. And look, I mean, I don't know why we're worried so much about a border between Russia and Ukraine, and we're not worried about our own border.
So the aid that we've been giving to Ukraine is not just military aid, it's also humanitarian aid. Let's not forget that Russia attacked a sovereign country and committed a huge war of atrocities. This is something that we need to make sure that we keep fighting for. This is about democracy not just in Ukraine, but around the world. And we are working very hard to ensure that there is no fraud, waste or abuse of the money that goes to them. Also worth noting that Donald Trump tried to pull the U.S. out of NATO. And our NATO allies will come to the assistance of Ukraine as well. Not just our NATO allies, but because Joe Biden was able to form an international alliance with some countries all around the industrial world in the West that have been fighting to help them as well.
This question goes first to candidate. Do we need a system of national voter registration to make sure that election integrity is consistent across the states?
This is delineated in the Constitution that it's a states' rights issue. But I'll tell you right now, it's weird that in Afghanistan and Iraq, I can assure voter integrity with just this, right? They roll their finger in ink, and I saw young men carrying old women on their backs, and they're so proud to vote, to get that chance to vote. And even at the risk of getting blown up because there'd be a suicide bomber once in a while, and yet in our country here, less than half of the people vote for elections, and it's an atrocity because I tell the young people that when you're not voting, you're really disrespecting some of those soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines who gave their lives for you to get the chance to vote. So I hope all Americans go out to vote. Whether they vote for me or not, I don't care. Go out and vote because that's your right as an American, and that's an obligation, a civic duty. But again, the voting is up to the states, and the states will manage that.
I think that we need federal protections for voting, absolutely. And something I've seen is that Republicans in Congress are trying to make it harder for people to vote, not easier. I think that one of the reasons that people don't vote is because it's too difficult. I'm very pleased that we made good starts in Virginia with things like same-day voter registration, which has begun. Things like ensuring that people have the right to vote and that they're able to vote at their polling place. Things like no excuse absentee ballot and early voting have definitely increased turnout. These are things that we need to increase, and we need to encourage people to vote and give them the tools to be able to do so more easily, not more difficult. They're not making it more difficult. I believe in things like making election day a national holiday. So these are things I'll continue to fight for in Congress.
I constantly find it insulting that the Democrats keep saying that immigrants and minorities are too stupid or too dumb to learn how to get an ID card and go vote. My parents I remember every first November, Tuesday, in November, my parents got up very early and they went over there and they voted first thing in the morning. They were proud. They were proud as Americans to be able to vote.
This question goes first to candidate Braxton. Do trade agreements like NAFTA and World Trade Organization help or hurt the Virginia economy?
So I believe that the interacting and working with our international partners to ensure that we have fair trade is very important and helps Virginia. Virginia is a net exporter in many things, including agricultural products and other items as well. We find that when we increase trade and we have fair trade with our international friends and our partners, we end up with it's better for everyone. And in Virginia, we have many options in order to be able to do that. So I think that's something that we can continue to do. And ensure that trade laws are uniformly and fairly enforced. So we know that there are countries that cheat on their trade. We know there are countries that give their producers unfair advantages, undercut prices. We need to make sure that we enforce the laws against them and make sure that we encourage exports of Virginia goods.
We need to enforce laws that are there, the trade laws, because we're getting taken to the bank by China, and we need to make sure that we enforce the fair agreement between ourselves and China.
Next question goes first to Karen. What is your opinion on nuclear power? Should we expand the number of plants we have now as a means of dealing with energy crisis?
That's a wonderful question, sir, because, that's one of my fortes. We've been using nuclear power in the Navy safely for 75 years. And in fact, Europe is now turning on some of their reactors because it gives you clean power. It's clean, it's And not only that, the amount of water you need in order to cool a reactor then can be turned into potable water, because the water then evaporates, and we do it in a 4-stage distiller where we can capture the water in an evaporator. And imagine places like California with unlimited water supply sources. And so yes, absolutely, nuclear energy is very safe, very clean, and is the most efficient thing out there.
I do believe that nuclear energy has a place in our energy portfolio and something that we use a lot of here in Virginia. One of the reasons that we have less emissions than many other states is something I think that we should continue to use, and also to ensure that we do it safely. It's something I would keep fighting for in Congress.
One of the things that often surprises candidates who run for office is the role that money plays in campaign finance. And it's very expensive to run for office, and it's getting more expensive every time. And if you're in a competitive district like this one is, you know this all too well. And so my question to you, and this goes first to Tamara Wexton, is what, if anything, should the federal government do to reduce the amount of money that candidates need when they run for office?
Wow, yeah, I think that we all agree that the campaign industrial complex is real, right? We all just need to turn on our TVs to see all the TV ads and things like that. So there's a lot of things we can and should do. One of the main things I think we should do is ban the dark money. Not just to ban it, but also to ensure that there are limits for dark money, and that the donors are disclosed. Because right now we have millions of dollars of undisclosed money coming into these super PACs, which then run ads and can buy elections. We should have billionaires being able to buy elections, because if they do it under the guise of a super PAC, when we have to, as candidates, have be subjected to limits and full disclosure. I think that the biggest thing we can do to help with money in politics is requiring super PACs. That we put limits on what can be donated to them, and that we require that there be full disclosure so that everyone will know who's actually paying for these super PACs commercials.
I wish I knew where to get dark money, because the 1.4 million that I got this past quarter, it came from 22,000 donors. I mean, people who gave me a lot of money from $1 checks, $5 checks. I'm so proud of that we're able to have a grassroots movement. But yes, there should be regulation on how we get money, because it is so expensive here. I mean, it shouldn't be a $10 million race to run for Congress. In a perfect world, I'd give someone a bus ticket, and that's all you get. You go walk around, and you gotta actually knock on doors yourself and go talk to your voters.
We absolutely need campaign finance reform in this country. So it's something I'll keep fighting for in Congress. I think that there are a lot of things we can do with limits to contributions, and encouraging things like limiting the time during which the window during which we are allowed to raise money, I think would help as well.
This will be the final question that I asked you, and then we'll go to the closing statements. This question goes first to candidate Cal. If you could propose one constitutional amendment and convince people to adopt it, what would it be?
I would really propose an amendment for term limits. I don't think that running for office and being in office should be a career. You should do it as an honor to this country, and it should be your devotion, and you do it for a few years and go back, and you really feel the pain that you put on the American people through the laws that you enact. And I think that's the most important thing. And there's just too many people that just hang out in Congress for 50 years, and they're still a terrible president.
All right.
Without question, the constitutional amendment that I would support making it part of the Constitution is the Equal Rights Amendment for women.
With that, we're going to turn to closing statements. And so we will have each candidate having the opportunity for 2 minutes to present their final remarks. Again, this was determined by coin toss ahead of time, and candidate Cal goes first. But before we do that, I do want to ask you to join me in saying thank you to both of these candidates for their willingness to serve. With that, I will withdraw the ability of people to be quiet. You've done a very good job, very respectful. It's a lesson sometimes to people in terms of how to behave in public forums. I think you've done well. We will have now the opportunity after each of these closing statements for you to offer your applause and your thanks to the candidates in turn. But please do be silent during their closing remarks. First now, candidate.
I think every Virginia voter needs to ask themselves tonight these questions. Are we safer now than we were 2 years ago? Are we thriving? Are we economically secure? Are we more united? Joe Biden stood in front of Independence Hall and called voters that didn't vote for him threats to democracy. This is the first time in U.S. history that a president of the United States called the voters in his country threats to democracy. And a representative with integrity would have stood up and said, with all due respect, Mr. President, you're wrong. The voters in my district are great Americans. They may not agree with our politics, but they're hardworking farmers, police officers, firefighters, healthcare workers, military, business owners, entrepreneurs. They're not threats to democracy. But instead, my opponent calls me an extremist. I'm a 100% disabled veteran, combat veteran. I'm a father of 5. I'm a husband to my beautiful wife of 23 years. I've bled and fought for this country. And you're using the same name, time and time again, that you use for terrorists. Ladies and gentlemen, I've commanded thousands of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines in my lifetime. And I knew some of them didn't believe the same things I did, but I represent them anyways, because it's my job. I think you deserve better. I think you deserve someone that will listen to you no matter whether or not you voted for me or not. I'll be out there. I'll listen to you. There's a saying where I come from, when we say, never above you, never below you, always beside you. That's where I'll always be, beside you, all the time. My name's Hung Cao. I'll be honored to be your next congressman.
We'll now turn to candidate Wexton. 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you. I called Mr. Cao an extremist because his views are extreme. He's extreme on gun violence prevention. After 19 elementary school children and 2 teachers were gunned down in Uvalde, he said, well, if it weren't guns, it would be knives or hammers or something like that. If more people get bludgeoned to death. That is absolutely inaccurate. I would say that it is an extreme view that is outside the mainstream and outside the opinion of most people in this district. He's a extremist on democracy protection. You know, when the insurrectionists were attacking the Capitol and then were arrested, he said, why are members of Congress not getting up and saying, these are my people, set them free. These are my people, set them free. And he wanted to overturn the results of a free and fair election. On abortion, he supports letting states outlaw all abortions and things like contraception as well. So I believe that he is very extreme in his views and outside the mainstream of the people of the 10th Congressional District. So I have spent years working across the aisle to deliver positive results for my constituents. That's what I'll keep doing in Congress should you re-elect me. Thank you so much. I'll keep fighting every day for all of our values.
us tonight and give us a candid conversation about their views. Thanks to all of you for listening. Have a pleasant evening.
And thank you, Dr. Farnsworth.